What's up, everybody?
Hello, hello.
What's good, dude?
Not too much. How you been?
I am great. I had a morning smoothie with a shot of espresso, so I am ready to go.
Good for you. Do you want to? I got topics. You got topics.
I got topics.
We haven't talked in a minute. Would you like to go first? I often do.
I'll go first.
Go for it.
So I'm reading a new book. It's actually a reread, but I read it so long ago I forgot it all. It's called Give and Take.
Okay.
Two interesting things. One that comes from the book, but one that I realized about myself while reading the book. The most persuasive thing I think you can do is tell a good story. More important than facts, more important than studies. This Adam Grant has obviously a thesis that he wants to convey, which is that giving is better than taking.
Well, no, it's that you need to do both. If you read the whole
Well,
book.
I'll get to that's my second point of what's actually better. But he can do this a number of ways. He can list the pros and cons of each and just tell you the methodology and the results. He can give you the stats, which he does briefly. Or he can tell you these elaborate multi-page stories without telling you how they're going to end. And you start with him. And by the end, you're like, oh my God, this one person, Abe Lincoln, is so incredibly successful because he's a giver. Being a giver is amazing.
Yeah.
And it's only because we're such cynics these days that I pause. I go, I wonder if you could pick a different president who had a habit of taking. I don't know the answer, but maybe Teddy Roosevelt or Obama or someone got to the exact same level of success by taking twice as much as they gave.
Yeah.
But that doesn't matter because to most people, including myself up until this year, basically, if you just tell one compelling story and then tell them that that is true across all humans, it immediately gets in. It's how the human brain processes information. I thought that was fascinating.
This is the Malcolm Gladwell thing. I don't know that he was the first to do it, but he was, for me, he's the iconic, and I don't even mean this in a derogatory way, fake science pop scientist.
Yeah,
you know what
sure.
I mean? Like, and we tell stories as well, so I don't mean it derogatorily, but in terms of cultural influence, you know, that's my thin slice, or did you put in your 10,000 hours? If he had just read the statistics out loud to people, they do not catch on, but there is, your guard is lowered in the event of a story. And we took hypnosis classes. You go into a trance state when a good story is being told. And the entire principle behind hypnosis, which some people don't believe is real. It absolutely is a real state that you can go into and be guided into. It's of heightened suggestibility. So that in the extreme things, you can hallucinate things, but certainly if you're just in a story, you can believe the thesis to be true.
Well, and this is Tony Robbins' superpower to some extent. And this is why I say the most persuasive thing you can do is become a good storyteller.
This is my laziest aspect of a charisma.
Tony,
I don't do this enough.
Tony will purposefully start a story. Midway through that story, go into another story. So he'll be like, I was having a conversation with a friend. Now you're in story one. And that friend was telling me about when he was in World War II. And now you're in story two. And when you tell layers of stories, it makes the human brain just go.
It's Inception.
And all of a sudden, your critical thinking defenses are down and you're just following along. And then whatever the moral of the story is gets in there because you're not in a state of mind to be critical. It's only, even for me reading it, I was like, oh my God, Abe Lincoln. And it was only after the chapter when I put the book down, I went, that was just one guy.
Yeah.
That was you should do this because one guy did it story.
Yeah.
But when I'm reading, I'm like, makes so much sense. And I still do like the book. I'm not being critical of Adam Grant. But to me, the number one takeaway of the book so far is storytelling is the most powerful way to get people to think what you want them to think.
Sure. And the truth of it, Adam Grant might have done a double-blind survey with thousands of participants and gone, okay, I have what I consider to be factually evidenced truth, but I'm not going to put that in the book because nobody cares about that, right? What people ultimately are going to respond to is a well-told story, and that's going to be what inspires action in people. This is, I think, one of the most difficult things about human psychology is that humans are not built to be responsive to truth with a capital T. We are built to respond to stories, to a bunch of other proxies for the truth, which creates a lot of good things, but also a lot of problems around the edges when somebody is a good storyteller with a bad message, right? Yeah.
No, I just thought it was fascinating. And it made me think, I don't know if it should go on the main channel or if I should just in my own life focus more on it. But anytime you try to persuade someone with numbers or statistics or facts, you are better off just pausing and going, how can I convey this in a story?
Well, this is what's hard because I try to be concise when I speak. And stories feel like they take too long to make a simple point, which you could stay with an aphorism. But they're better at actually getting the change that you want to do. This is when we do a video with storytelling it's regularly one of our worst performing videos. And I know this, and I know that I'm not the only one that feels this way. It is the least attractive element of charisma. Definitely the most underrated, though.
Yeah.
And I don't do it enough. I know that you don't do it a lot, but we have friends that do, and they're spellbinders.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That's how you make stuff happen. So
yeah, so I thought that was interesting. And then the second thing that I thought was interesting is in his world, there's givers, which are just people who give more than they try to receive. If they receive, it's not their primary goal. Reciprocators, what they do is they match. They go, Charlie did me a favor, I'll do him a favor. And then there's takers, who are mostly going, I'm going to try to get. And I thought what was interesting was the givers do the absolute worst and the absolute best. Mm-hmm. And I think that it would be interesting for us to kind of dive into that, because I know a lot of the givers at the bottom feel like the world is unfair. Mm-hmm. They go, the world is full of dicks, assholes get ahead, I'm selfless, and because of that, I'm not getting promoted, I'm poor, I'm getting walked over in my relationships, and it's because I'm selfless. And it's like, no, if you were just selfless in a smarter way, you'd actually be the richest person you know, with great relationships and a bunch of people dying to help you because of how helpful you were. And I just think that's interesting too, because we often come up with our own narratives, it's the world is unfair. It's like, maybe you're just doing it wrong.
What is his thesis? It's been years since I read the book. Is that there's two ways to give. One, which is more, have you gotten to that part yet?
No, dude. I'm halfway through.
Yeah, so I don't remember.
It's a cliffhanger.
For next week.
I just thought that was interesting, though. The takeaway I had, again, was like, when people think that the world is against them, the right answer is often to look inside and go, could I be doing this in a smarter way? Mm-hmm. So when you're like, the world rewards assholes, and I'm getting walked over because I'm nice, the answer is, the world kind of rewards assholes, but it mostly apparently rewards people who are selfless just in a smart way. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And I see a lot of people who are more like, it's unfair and it's set up to help the bad people.
Yeah, I don't have the answer, but this is when you're doing something and it's not working, it's possible that you're doing exactly the wrong thing and you need a complete overhaul and you got to throw everything out and start over. Or it's possible that you need the minorest tweak to put everything into overdrive. And, this is true of our business. This is true of a lot of things that we did. We were writing very similar articles to the ones that eventually made it onto our YouTube channel, which blew it up. Mm-hmm. And if we had gone, this charisma thing, it's just never going to work. You know, we got to wipe everything off and start completely over. That would have been a bummer. But the minor tweak of switching to video and doing a breakdown format was like what would help the business take off. How does one identify those moments? I don't know. Where you need to completely clean house and start over, or when you just want to make a tiny switch. I feel like if you could do that, you would success would come much more easily.
Well, feedback to others has been the best for us, right? Mm-hmm. Or feedback from others, sorry. So when we were doing our company called Kick-Ass Academy, everyone told me that name was stupid. Yeah. It was unscalable, and what we were doing would only appeal to a very small subset of people. Mm-hmm. And I just went, la 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 la, I'm not going to listen to you. And I heard it 10 times. And then we switched to Charisma on Command, and it was super beneficial to our business. And similarly for me, I didn't just hear that I was kind of a sarcastic dick once growing up. I heard it from all over the place, from various friends in various times in my life. And when I made that switch from being sarcastic to being really positive and making jokes that brought people up, I saw a tremendous benefit. Mm-hmm. So I wonder, and this would kind of run counter though to us starting our business, so it's got to be more nuanced than this, but I wonder if are you getting the feedback that you're a pushover from various friends who love you? If so, you're probably a pushover. Or are you just not getting the results you want, but you're not getting that specific feedback? Maybe it's a little tweak in that case.
This is tough because you just said it, because everyone told us that what we were doing was dumb. I don't know if there was a single supporter when we started our business. I know.
That's why I flagged that. I'm saying I don't know if this is right, but I'm just looking at my own life. A lot of the best changes came from actually listening to feedback. Hard feedback. That sucked to hear.
True. And then some of the other best changes came from ignoring everyone. Yeah. So I don't have the answer to
Get lucky.
Let's think. No, that's something that I want to think about. This is an important question. When to quit, when to listen to other people. I often think about this because there's so much advice out there there's these common aphorisms which we all say, which is look before you leap and those who hesitate are lost. Like common things that we all say and we go, I should have known that. But it's like there's standard pieces of advice that are completely opposite. Genius comes in knowing when to apply which aphorism. And some people will tell you, you can't quit. Winners never quit. You got to persevere. And then you'll hear another brilliant thing, which is when something isn't working, insanity would be to continue doing that thing over and over again. And it's in knowing when to apply which that you can get success. And right now I can't ascribe anything other than dumb luck to what we've to the successes in our life. But yeah, it'd be cool to have a heuristic that allowed you to determine, okay, this is something that needs to be quit, started over, and okay, this is something that despite what everyone else is saying, I should continue to persevere with because I can make it happen.
I will say, because we're not complete innovators in starting our business. We got inspired from Tim Ferriss. Mm-hmm. When I was being sarcastic and hurting people's feelings, no one was telling me, you know what's really fun?
Got it.
Know what's great? When you make jokes that cut your friends down and then they get really sad, but other people laugh. That's sick. You should keep doing that. Mm-hmm. But with the business, even though everyone in our lives said, don't quit your jobs, we did have people who we didn't know personally who were telling us the thing to do is quit your investment banking job.
Yeah.
Start a business that you care about. Live on the beach in Brazil.
Got it.
That is the thing to do. And so I was getting different advice from loved ones versus someone I idolized at the time.
A mentor, yeah.
Yeah. But no one was like, hey, make jokes that cut people down. That's a sick method of humor.
Okay, so this is an imperfect heuristic because I'm sure that there's moonshots like Elon Musk's things that nobody would support.
Exactly.
But generally speaking, consider the source of the advice that is coming to you, right? And so, everyone in your life who is well positioned to tell you how much they like you is telling you, this makes me like you less.
Yeah.
But then family and friends who have never started a business, never quit their jobs, never done anything, like, of course they are not in a position to tell you what to do regarding what works.
Yeah.
But Tim Ferriss, who has and did and has examples of other people who have and did, even though he's an N of one, is a much better person to listen to in that case.
And there's a truism that I really like, which is don't take advice from someone that you don't want to be like. Mm-hmm. And so...
At least in that aspect of their lives.
Yeah, and so when I have friends who I really like, who are like, hey, we still like you, but this thing you do, this habit you have, it's off-putting. Mm-hmm. I go, okay, well, you're really likable, and I want you to like me, and you're really likable. Okay, this is worth taking feedback on.
Yeah.
And when all my friends who are going on to work at hedge funds are going, dude, you should go to a hedge fund, just work 6 a.m. to 5 p.m., make a bunch of money. I go, well, I don't want that life.
Yeah.
I don't want, what you're doing is cool for you, but I don't want that. So I'm going to disregard your advice because you don't have the results I want. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I think that's actually huge, is take the feedback if it's from people who are doing what you want to be doing.
Yep. In consideration of the source. Nailed it. Figured it out.
That's
live.
Great. That's great.
So F transition. I watched a documentary that I watched probably 10 years ago called The Corporation, and I wanted to rewatch it because it was highly influential on me, and still I agree with large portions of it. It's a documentary about corporations and it's the issues that are endemic to corporations, which is they are treated as people under the law in many respects, which is they can fund campaigns, they can save money, they can do all these things, but there's no moral locus of a corporation. In fact, they're only they have one responsibility. It's fiduciary. It's to generate a profit. Mm-hmm. And in order to do that, they use externalities. Mm-hmm. So if you can make more money by polluting, and there's no cost dollar-wise to polluting, not only will you do that, but if you don't, you will be outcompeted by the corporation that does do that because you will have to bear the cost. So we have this system of just this is what's going to be created in these corporations. And I still agree with the thesis of this documentary in that there's a problem in how we've structured these things, right? In that we have made shareholder responsibility the only legal thing which a CEO can be guided by. But where I've changed as in the last 10 years is there still is this implicit split between what they consider the fat cats, essentially, the CEOs, these greedy bad people over here, and who they would consider, at the time it was right before the financial meltdown, the 99%. Mm-hmm. And it's almost like, here's the 99% of salt of the earth, good, honest people. And then there's this 1% of evil people who run everything. And it never said what I've seen to be true, which is you take somebody from the 99% with their principles and behaviors of what they do, and you put them in a position of power, and you will see the exact same behavior that you get from those people. Like, the only thing that makes those CEOs worse actors is the multiplicative power that they have. But people cheat, steal, lie in their life all the time, don't care where they source their food from, their shirts from, etc., are unwilling to pay the price of doing the right thing in exactly the same way CEOs are unwilling to pay the price of doing the right thing.
I actually think the 99% do the same stuff, just at a small scale. I actually think that for every Enron scandal, there's just 99 identical people doing small scale Enron scandals.
Well, and you know, you're at the cash register, they ring up a bill, you notice that something wasn't rung up, right? And you'd have to go out of your way to correct it. There's so many examples of this. Taxes.
I got sent 4 things on Amazon when I only ordered 1.
Yeah.
And my question was, should I mail them back or not? You know, and I ended up mailing them back, but someone was in the room with me when I got them. They're like, "Oh, just keep them."
Yeah.
It's like, this isn't costless. There's just someone has to pay for these. Like, I'd be stealing from the supplier, but in their brain, they're like, "Oh, it's just free. It's free stuff." And it's like, well, that's what's That's what the CEO is doing, but it's just $10 million because he has bigger reach than these little stuffed animals.
And I speed, you know, it says 55 and I go 60. I go as fast as I can without getting pulled over.
64.
And then they get mad at corporate people who do the same thing. And I guess the only, not the only, I've changed it in a lot of ways, but the biggest change from when I first watched it is that I was very willing to blame the problems of the planet on a specific class of people who were not me.
Who are worse than you.
Who were worse than me.
Yeah, it feels better that way.
And yes. And I think this is, we talk about this probably every episode, but I just see it over and over again. The world is the way it is in most part because of your flaws multiplied by 7 billion people.
Yeah.
And while you do want to do what you can to help persuade those people to change their flaws in a political thing, you got to start by figuring out how to clean that stuff up in your own life, even when it's small, because if you were the president, your flaws would be magnetized. It's not magnetized. Magnified.
Do you want to talk about the marketing hiccup we ran into?
Yeah.
So this is an A transition. I had this on my list. So speaking of people at small scales will just do the same bad stuff, but at smaller scales. So we've been trying to hire a marketer to replace me for running the marketing. And we might have to shut that down altogether because I was working with a guy and I told him over and over, honesty number 1. I would rather make less money. We need to have full transparency because a lot of marketing stuff is to like lie around the edges or bend the truth. And I told him this, and then he sent me a page and it had some stuff that I wasn't comfortable with. And so we had him change it.
Well,
right?
I mean, let's just be clear what it is because this is the type of thing that people do.
Okay, so it's the checkout cart for our Charisma University. And we have testimonials. They're legit. They're from some of our thousands of customers. And so I said, here's our document where we keep all our testimonials. People have given us permission to use them. Pick your favorite ones. So he picks them. And then under each one, there's a star rating. 5 out of 5 stars. 4.5 out of 5 stars. I go, that's weird. We do collect stars, but our star rating is anonymous. So I ask him, where did you get these? What technology did you use to find
to associate this rating with
and he goes, I didn't. What I did was I read the testimonial and I just went, this seems like a 5-star. This seems like a 4.5 star. Okay, well, you can't do that. That's dishonest. Please take that out. He goes, okay, I'll take it out. Doesn't push back, nothing, right? So I go, okay, he gets it now.
I told him once. I corrected him once.
He gets it.
We're clear.
And then we end up almost going live. I only caught it at the last minute with a page that has photos next to the testimonials as well because we ask people, can we use your photo? He did not go to the page that says has photos. He just took his favorite testimonials and then went to a random royalty-free photo thing, took 5 photos of people that have no idea who we are, and then put them next to the testimonials. So it would say Matt, and Matt's his real name, and it'd say the words Matt said, and then it'd be a picture of some guy that was not Matt. And I was shocked that even after being told the star rating is too much of a lie, he didn't go, oh, is the fact that I fabricated these photos too much of a lie?
Yeah. I think what that highlights to me, and if you're not a marketer, chances are you're like, I would never do that.
Oh, he thinks he is so high integrity and that this is just industry practice.
Yes.
And it is, by the way.
That's my point, is that industry practice has lies baked into it. And whatever your industry is, if you're a doctor and you're pushing the particular drug that the guys came in and they sold to you and they said, this one's really good, and you didn't do deep diligence into that particular drug and who needs it. Like, industries have lies baked into them. And if you're not bucking against the trend of your industry, you're not an evil person. That you're probably just frequently lying.
I don't know if I told you this. It's such an industry practice. I Google image searched this photo. I went, who is this? Is this Matt? And this photo has been used to give testimonials for everything.
Yeah.
Like this service is for fake testimonials. And so this guy's been giving testimonials for software and cars and all over the internet. And it just was like, oh, wow. What it made me realize also is that every website is a lie. Unless you really, really trust the person. Yeah, I get why people think, oh, their testimonials might be fake. I didn't get it at first. It's like, of course they're not fake. We've had thousands of people. There's 5 testimonials here. But now I get it. Because most testimonials, I think, are fake on the internet.
Or are honest testimonials with a star rating added, or that's not the person. And it's I think the bigger point here is not that this person is not exceptionally dishonest. I think that's what this person is, probably honest with their friends, honest with their family, in the same degree that most people
it's just
are.
Average honesty.
But these things do not occur to him. And I guess the only point to be made is culture and the morality that is standard dictates that certain lies are just okay. And there's subcultures within industries and groups of friends. And in order for the world to be a better place, I think individuals have to step out and be better than the culture in which they were born into at personal expense, selling less. Not, your customer, if you're the doctor, doesn't take the drug and you make less money. You don't do the surgery that was, maybe we need it, maybe we don't. And in order for the big wigs to be better, we need I think a groundswell of a population that is better. I do think it goes ground up, though I wouldn't say that means that you shouldn't focus on who, is running these major corporations. But that's just what I see. I feel like every time I hear this, it's like, shoot, I have to sit down and free write on all the ways in which I am lying and I don't even realize it. And then, there's always, you're like, oh my God, like it just never ends. It's the self-deception goes so deep,
I'm going to share one more quick one just for people to protect themselves as consumers. I was on YouTube and I got a YouTube ad and it was a woman saying, when I first started my company, I didn't know how to run meetings. And then I started using insert software. And I went, this is my friend who's an actress. Did she start a company?
Yeah.
And I look at her LinkedIn and I search and this and that and nope. So I message her. I was like, hey, are you in this thing? And apparently, I don't know if this is illegal and people just don't get prosecuted, but companies will hire actresses and not say it will have no asterisk that says this is just an
paid actress.
Yeah. And they'll just say, hey, will you say that you're the founder of a company and you use our product? And she goes, yeah, sure. I'm an actress. This isn't lying. This is acting.
Yeah.
And so, whenever you see a video like that, I would just be skeptical because that blew my mind.
Yeah. Yeah. And maybe, I don't know, maybe that's so standard and they're like, you didn't even know this.
I think if you're small, this is probably a $1 million revenue company.
Yeah.
Who's going to press charges on them?
Yeah. I doubt it's illegal, to be clear. I bet you that's not illegal. Lying is surprisingly legal. And I actually think it's important because then you would need someone who was in charge of determining the truth, which is a very sticky thing.
Yeah. Well, this one's obvious. I'm 100% positive. She didn't start the business. She's claiming.
Fair enough. That's fairly easy. F transition. So we did a video on Trevor Noah.
Yes.
And I'm constantly surprised, but I think there's a deeper psychological issue here that is interesting in that the polarization that occurs when we touch on a political subject, whether it's somebody from the right or somebody in Trevor's case that is more left-leaning. The amount of people that do not care about the charisma tips, but just are here to say that they hate this individual. Yeah. And I was like, wow, I didn't realize Trevor seems like a fairly decent,
people hate him.
Smiley. Well, some people hate him. Some people love him. But if he were just a stand-up comedian, no one would hate him.
Yeah.
Right? If he just told the jokes that he tells in his stand-up, no one would care. And my question is, I think I have an idea, but what is it about politics that makes people so comfortable throwing out the basic benefit of the doubt that they often extend to other human beings, and now they're just willing to go, this monster, that monster, whatever. Do you have any?
I mean, I think it's just basic in-group, out-group, right?
It could be, but. And maybe people do people do this in sports in the same way, where it's like those Patriots fans are monsters?
Not really, actually. People agree that Philly fans are monsters because we are, because that's fair. But no, on the whole,
you're right.
You could say, no, the Seahawks suck, but they got good fans.
If you're watching the Super Bowl and you're rooting for opposing teams, you might tell your friend, like, do not come. But you're fine with that friend. Like, you're buddies. You're cool.
Yeah, you can be at dinner and talk about sports without shouting at each other. And a lot of times, if you're super left and someone else is super right, you're going to end up screaming at each other if politics comes up.
Okay, and what about, and I would even say modern day religion. I mean, Jewish people and Catholics sit at dinner tables together all the time. There's in-group, out-group. They don't seem to hate one another. Mm-hmm. There's something particular about politics that does it.
I don't know. Is it because you think that the other side is the cause of all your problems?
So I think what I think that is happening, and just to preempt is people going, no, this is important. When I consider most people, the way that they engage with politics, it would be 99% of their time is spent arguing at dinner tables, online, with their friends, etc. 1% is spent voting once every 4 years. And less than $100 is donated towards any sort of cause, and they don't volunteer, and they're not active in their communities in a way that matches the amount of time they spend angry about politics.
Yeah. They'll shout about how Trump is evil for an hour a day every day, but do very little to make sure he's not actually reelected.
Yeah, or they'll shout about, so they shout about Trump, or they shout about Elizabeth Warren or Bernie Sanders. Like it's I don't mean to say that this is at all one particular side. I see it everywhere. And I say that they don't actually care about community level change because they don't start with community level change, and they don't participate in other vehicles that would allow them to more directly, faster change the ground swell via their money or their time spent volunteering. So then I go, okay, what is it that is so internally appealing about being furious at someone? And I think, and this is based on the last several years of my life and understanding more about my own psychology and the people around me, is that it's a projection of unresolved issues with the people in your life. Your mom, your dad, your authority, the guy who bullied you in school, the frat guys who were jerks and represented something, or the girls that never paid you attention, or the snowflakes that made you not be able to say what you wanted to say. And
I don't even think it has to be one-to-one. I think people just have rage inside them.
Where does that come from? And I think when you look into every individual and what triggers particular individuals, I do think it has to do a lot with personal history.
Sure, but you could hate your mom and take it out on Trump. I don't think like you were saying.
Sorry.
You were saying maybe it's a conservative person who feels like liberals have infringed on his free speech, and he takes it out on Bernie Sanders. And I'm saying no, maybe his older brother used to beat him up, and he hates Elizabeth Warren.
Yes,
because he has a lot of rage that was repressed because his older brother was always stronger, and it's just gotta go somewhere. And I don't think that the person they're taking it out on has to in any way parallel the person they're mad at. It helps, but they just need somewhere to vomit their rage.
Yes, there does not have to be, they don't have to match the gender, political affiliation, any of that. Yeah. What they do have to trigger is the same sort of emotion in that person of impotence, or of not being able to be heard, or of being demonized, but whatever it is that they feel like that person does. That's what I tend to see, because I truly think caring does not explain most people's behavior. Like I see what care looks like when people are involved with their own families, and they don't just scream about it. They go to the PTA meetings, they show up, they're present, they're on the ground level doing things other than yelling about it. And while I am sure, and if you're one of those people that is actively involved and is volunteering and doing those things, you can exclude yourself from what I'm saying right now. You don't need to take personal offense to this. But I'm thinking of the majority of people that I encounter that do not do any of those things.
I can think of someone with very strong opinions who will absolutely let you know them, who does nothing at all to help any of the things she purports to care about.
Yes. And so when I dig into that, and same thing with myself, I think it's these internal issues that aren't resolved. And so then so what does this mean for moving forward in the world? What would be cool for us to do as a company and all that kind of stuff? And it seems like helping people to resolve their inner conflicts, not only for like the benefit of the world and the screaming that's happening, but you got to carry that rage around. And it only gets to get let out once every election cycle, where you get to just rage. And then I guess you get to passively complain against when the other party's in power. You get to say that they're the reason that I'm so miserable and unhappy. But yeah, man, helping people to, I think, see what it really is can start to help them release that, or at least that's been my experience. And I'd like to try to do that more as a company. So we're going to get weirder content coming out, less how to be confident, more how to cry about your past. And
or rage.
Or rage
how
about
to release
your
rage.
Yeah.
We made a video like that. It did terribly.
Yeah, and they regularly do terribly. This is part of the issue that we've talked about this, that I'm encountering with Charisma on Command, is that most people identify their problems as with regards to charisma, confidence, what do I say to make small talk, etc. And those were where I identified all of my problems. And as I've sort of gotten those fundamentals taken care of, what has become much more interesting and much more impactful to me in my life is figuring out how to deal with these deeper seated modes of being that have been inside of me since I was little and got implanted there by interactions and things that ways in which needs weren't met that I thought they should be met and all that kind of stuff. But I'd like to do more of that, is what I'm saying.
Yeah. You know my policy. Do one for you, one for them. One Don Draper, one deep rage video.
Perfect.
Then a second Don Draper, then another rage video.
Then a third Don Draper. So, next question. Do you want to go with one of yours? I got a couple.
I had a question for you. I saw a happiness study in, I think it was the New York Times. Let me pull it up. No, it was not the New York Times. But I'm skeptical of it, and I wanted to ask you what your opinion was. So, psychologist Rich Walker of Winston-Salem State University looked at 30,000 event memories and 500 diaries, ranging from 3 months to 4 years in duration, and he says that people who engage in a variety of experiences are more likely to retain positive emotions and minimize negative ones than people who have fewer experiences. And so basically he's saying the more variety you experience, the more you travel, the more different foods you eat at each meal, the more...
Well, is that what he defines as variety?
Yeah, I can go in. Pursuing interesting hobbies, reading various types of books, traveling, eating different food, meeting different people, collecting experiences is going to make you happier and more resilient to sadness.
Well, so part of the issue with that right off the bat is this correlated or causal? Because it's totally possible that depressed people, because they're depressed, stay in their room, do the same thing, don't do these other things. And it's not as if traveling would immediately snap their depression. Yeah. That what came first was the depression, and the result of that is the limited experience.
And this is my question, because certainly one of, it seems, my absolute happiest friends, he was from the Midwest, and he went to an Ivy League school and became a lawyer, and he had the whole world at his fingertips, and he could have gone to New York City and made a bunch of money. And instead, he went back to the Midwest, he got married, he has 2 kids, and he has 2 dogs. And he seems so happy. Yeah. And he is lit about random stuff. Like, he's like, it's barbecue Sunday. And every Sunday is barbecue Sunday. And he's so stoked about it every Sunday. Yeah. And I see a lot of people in my life who are world travelers or entrepreneurs, who are millionaires, who are dating a bunch, and who are chasers. They seem less happy. Yeah. They want more. And so when I read this study, I went, I'm not sure it's wrong, but I'm not sure it's right. And I was curious what you think.
Well, it's possible for that study to be both statistically representative and to not say a darned thing about what makes people happy. Yeah. It is totally possible that on the whole, happiness has higher correlation with variety of experiences for the reasons that I described. What is my own anecdotal experience of this? I tend to like routine, so I can't. That's just my experience. And when I think of people, I know people in both categories.
Yeah, that's kind of how I felt.
I wouldn't go to amount of variety experience to influence your happiness.
I
would start elsewhere.
No, that was my take. And I just thought, I was like, is this true? Would I tell people, oh, you want to be happier? You need to take a vacation every 3 months? It's like, only if you want to.
No, I would say start elsewhere. This seems to be an unimportant influencer of happiness based on my own personal experiences.
No, that's my thought as well. Yeah. I just was like, oh, it's a study I'd never heard of, and I wonder what Charlie's take is on it.
Yeah, not highly influenced. Yeah. My dad sent me, here's another article. My dad sent me an article from the New York Times Magazine that was on video game addiction.
Oh, sick.
And I always like reading these to try to understand, the New York Times Magazine is not for me. It's for my dad. So it's for that generation to describe something. My dad doesn't play video games, and I doubt many of the readers of New York Times Magazine do. So it's interesting to see how they introduce this topic. But the biggest thing that I took as they describe these people who are addicted to video games and whether it's an addiction or not, if it qualifies, if only drugs should qualify, if addiction is defined by a particular substance or of a set of behaviors that are independent of the substance. I tend to believe that it's a relationship with something that is compulsive and you continue doing it despite the fact that you have evidence that it no longer serves you and makes you happy. But what I thought this was interesting. They talked about video game, and this was this was proof. A typical gamer in the United States spends 12 hours playing each week. 34 million Americans play an average 22 hours per week. 60% of gamers have neglected sleep to keep playing, and 40% have missed a meal. 20% have skipped a shower. And this was in the context of, wow, video games are this big thing. Yeah. And I was like, what if we just subbed out work for video games? Okay. A typical worker in the United States spends 40 hours working every week. Like, you know, they work this much. Have they ever neglected sleep to make it to work? Have they ever skipped a meal to work? Have they ever missed a shower to work?
No.
It seems to me
some of those stats are different than others. Like 12 hours a week is nothing. I think the average American watches 5 hours of TV television at night, right?
Yeah.
The losing sleep one, I think, is indicative of a bit of a compulsion, though.
Sure. And I'm not saying that I think video games fit the prototype of something that is going to give you dopamine in that particular scheduled way. And I believe that video game addiction is as much a thing as heroin addiction and work addiction.
Sure. I'm just saying, if you are someone watching this and you play video games for 12 hours a week, you're cool by me. If you find that you want to stop at 10, you go, I'm going to stop at 10. Mm-hmm. I'm going to play till 10:30. Mm-hmm. One more level. It's 1 a.m. I got to beat the boss. And all of a sudden it's 4 a.m. It's like, yeah, you have a bit of a compulsive issue.
Yeah.
You know? And so it's weird that they all got lumped together, I guess.
I thought that it was interesting because what I saw in this article is that it starts with the mindset that addiction is particular to drugs and alcohol. Mm-hmm. And then they go, okay, well, gambling too. And then they're kind of taking, I think, my dad's generation through this new paradigm of addiction as not so much related to the particular substance, but related to one's relationship with something, whether it's used in an escape and if it's used in a compulsive manner. And
what about dating?
Dating, I don't see why not. And people.
Have you ever missed a meal? Have you ever lost sleep? Do you spend more than 12 hours a week? Not even with your person, fighting or thinking about them? Or...
Yeah. So the question that I would ask, what are the things in my life, it could be video games, absolutely, that I have evidence do not make me happy or serve me, yet I find myself compulsively doing. Mm-hmm. And I think that if you don't have any of those hard addictions, drugs, and if you don't even have any of the more common soft ones, gambling, etc., you'll find that there's something that you compulsively do. Because I've been trying to sit still in my room, and I can't, man. I purposely try to sit down there and not use the internet, not read, not something. And what I find that I believe drives everyone is the inability to sit still with oneself and be okay. And I need to cultivate that in myself because I'm addicted. I'll be addicted to anything. Yeah. Whatever you give me that gets me out of sitting still, I will latch onto that thing and come back to it, even though it doesn't make me happy.
I say we go back to the good old days before video games when everyone was just an alcoholic. You know? Just go back to the simpler addictions.
That's really positive ones.
Drugs and alcohol. Let's go back to the 70s or the 40s.
The other thing that I read, this was interesting. So I've been doing this video on Thomas Shelby.
Yeah.
And he's interesting. He's a character from Peaky Blinders, and people like him because he's cool and all these things, but he also has these strategies that work out because it's a scripted drama. Mm-hmm. But also, I think there's an interesting way in which he goes around solving these things. And you can watch the video. I don't want to spoil too much of Peaky Blinders, but he often has multiple problems that crop up, and he's able to solve them by combining them and using what in the video I call using trash as a resource. And so this week I was looking for these types of things in the world. And so first Ivan called me and he's like, dude, have you heard of these container homes?
Yeah.
And he just brought this up out of nowhere. He's like, you know, those shipping containers, well, they have too many of them. They've just been sitting out. And so people realize that these things they're meant to go over the ocean. You know what I mean? Like they can deal with storms and they can be battered and all this kind of stuff. And they're pretty tall. So you stack a couple of these together, cut a door in one, and you've got these interesting rooms. Mm-hmm. So people are now living in cheap housing from shipping containers. And I was like, that's so fascinating. There's an idea of using what was just filling up a landfill, which was a problem that somebody had to get rid of, as a resource. And then I was just reading stuff, and this guy, Boyan Slat, have you heard of him?
No.
He's an environmentalist. He's like a 24-year-old European. And he decided that he wanted to clean up the ocean because there's these big trash mounds just floating in the ocean, and they tend to clump together. And everyone else who has looked at this problem is like, this is just not economically feasible. Why would we go out into the middle of the ocean to clean up trash? We got trash everywhere else. Let's start with that. Mm-hmm. But he, being innovative and smart, goes, well, there's kind of an advantage to the ocean, which is that it's water. Mm-hmm. And the water instantly, if there's paper out there, it doesn't float. So the only things that are in these heaps are plastic. So they've already done our recycling sorting for us. So if we can get out there and we get enough of this, we just have all of this plastic, which we can sell back to these recycling plants and make money off of. And so not only is that a brilliant thing to use this trash as a literal resource, but then the engineers there are really smart, and they invent these solar-powered, low-energy things, which are basically just giant parachutes with a tiny parachute in the back. So you push them into the ocean currents, and the ocean drags this parachute. But because there's this little parachute, it drags it a little bit slower than the trash. So the trash just starts to build up in this massive parachute thing. And it's low tech, man. It's you know, they got radars and GPS so they can track it down, but it's just a catcher, you know?
Wow.
And of course they had to work hard on the engineering to make sure the trash doesn't spill over the top, and there were definite engineering problems, but from a conceptual standpoint, it's not all these moving parts. And so what they're saying is, if we can leave this thing out for 5 years and just have it catch all this trash, what he's saying is he can take down the trash in the Pacific by 50% in 5 years.
Wow.
And it doesn't work at low scale. If they get it up to that size, it's profitable. So then they're taking this trash, making money, selling it back. They send one giant boat up there to basically go pick up all of this. I mean, it's money, right? It's plastic that they can reuse. And I thought that was so fascinating.
That is
such an innovative way to think about a problem. And we don't have to do it live because I think we'll probably stumble for a long time, but I wanted to sit down with you and think about this in our own lives and business.
Yeah.
And the question is, what do I think of as trash in my life? What is just a headache? What just costs time and money? What's just a waste?
Yeah, some of the videos I made.
And the question is, in what context could this really be valuable?
And
like, you know what I'm saying, right? And if you did think, you're like, oh, that was a terrible video, like, okay, what can I repurpose them, reuse them, whatever. So I haven't figured it out, but that's how nature works. And that's one of the weird things that technology in the first industrial revolution got messed up, is that it was linear. It was like, we take oil, we use it, we do this thing, it creates crappy oil, and we throw that elsewhere, and it's a straight line.
Yeah, we need to think more outside the box than this. But one thing I'm thinking is, we have some videos I think are actually excellent that not a lot of people have seen. I wonder, we've talked about, could you retitle it? What if you took 4 of them and their best points, right? So you pick 4 videos that you think are good that people haven't seen. You turn them into one video that is excellent by cutting the worst parts of all 4. And now you have a video that's, instead of just about Thomas Shelby or just about Don Draper, is about some overarching thing that combines 4 celebrities in their best stuff. And that might be 10 out of 10 content with a good title. And so now you take these things no one's seen, and it becomes one of our best videos that a lot of people could see.
And that's exactly the type of mentality. Like, what is wasted? What is garbage? What am I overlooking? What is just and even beyond that, because that's not necessarily a drain. Like, what are the things that are costing us money that we look at as cost
necessary
evils that could become hugely positive with the shift in context. So I wanted to go through and do that with you. We don't have to do it today.
I think it's a great idea.
Let's chat about it. And generally speaking, I think that's the future of environmentalism. I think it's the future of business. Is you know, we're used to linear. You take something out of the earth, you transform it, it gives you a waste product. But nature, of course, is, you know, plants create CO2 plants create oxygen, which animals take in, and
the waste of plants is the life's blood of humans. And
those are the words I wanted. And it makes a circle, right? And so that is what sustainability looks like. Sustainability doesn't look like efficiency in a straight line. It looks like a circle. So we should definitely chat about that.
I like it.
Cool. Any other things that you had?
Yes, but this is only if it's interesting to you. Do you know Shia Labeouf's backstory?
Some of.
Did you find it when I thought this was fascinating. If you think it's interesting, or people think it's interesting, I think it's cool to dive into. When I saw him having his breakdowns, however many years ago, screaming in front of a green screen, wearing a thing over his head, I went, what a spoiled lunatic. A, what a jerk for complaining that he has problems when he's so rich and famous. And B, what a crazy person. What an unjustified thing that's occurring. You know what I mean? And I kind of judged him from afar. And then as I get older, I've learned to have some empathy. I was not very empathetic. I was super judgmental in my 20s. But I was watching this video about his backstory, about his drug-addicted father, about being 5 years old and having to go sell hot dogs to support himself, about being the only white kid at his school and having to learn to be funny so that he didn't get beaten up. Literally learning yo mama jokes, because if he didn't have a good comeback, then he would get beat up. But if he made people laugh, then they'd spare him. And he goes through this. And when he was in Even Stevens, in my mind, I was like, oh yes, he looks like me. He's like a white middle class kid. He got this big break, and then he's rich. He was living in a motel with his drug addicted father, and he saw heroin and all this other crazy shit. And for me, at least, I went, oh my God, of course he's had a hard time. Of course he had his breakdown. And it's true of everybody who's ever had a breakdown. It's true of Justin Bieber's breakdown. It's true of Britney Spears' breakdown. And I don't know. I just thought it was fascinating. It's this journey I'm on to continue to be not judgmental. And it was just another lesson that kind of hit home for me. Anytime you see someone and you think they're crazy, they're stupid, they're not like you probably just don't realize the horrible shit that they've been through. Yeah. So yeah, I thought that was fascinating, because to me, he's just the guy from Transformers. What a lucky kid, rich at 17.
Yeah, I got to act alongside Megan Fox, who was my childhood crush.
And it's like, oh, you wouldn't trade for a second with this poor kid who's gone through so much. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, I really enjoyed doing my breakdown on him. He talks about that stuff. He is so disarmingly upfront about a lot of it. And he talks about seeking, I guess I probably did it all for validation from my dad, like just so disarmingly real when he answers the questions about what motivates him and those sorts of things. So I've blocked a lot of the YouTube videos so I don't spend too much time, but the ones that occasionally do pop up at the end are Shia Labeouf videos, and every now and then I just watch a new interview of his. I like him.
No, it's incredible. And then you think, okay, he's so traumatized, I can have empathy with him because his dad was such a bad dad. His dad was a Vietnam War vet.
Yeah.
God only knows what he did.
Yeah.
And what he thought he was doing to be a patriot and protect his country. And so again, it's just layers of empathy if you can get in that space. Yeah. It's very interesting.
What's the phrase? He who understands all forgives all.
Yeah.
And I think the problem is that we have such a shallow understanding of so many people, more than ever, right? Like you are familiar with a quantity of people that would have blown most humans.
Impossible. Impossible.
100 years ago, could not have known the name of someone who didn't live in your tiny little thing.
And yet you know nothing about them.
You know nothing about them. But you have this illusion, because what's weird is you've seen them. You've seen them in an intimate, candid moment on whatever, doing an interview or
spitting
something.
On a cop. Being arrested, spitting on a cop. And you go, this dude's a fucking jerk.
Yeah.
Sorry, Angel, you're going to have a lot of sense. Sorry, a lot today. But like, you're going, this guy is out of control, a spoiled brat, spitting on a cop. Money's gone to his head. Yeah, but he also had a terrible upbringing, and he has to go to alcohol because he's dying inside.
Yeah. Well, and again, similar to politics, I think that when you look at the strong opinions, both positive and negative, that people have around celebrities that they do not know.
Yeah.
It's one thing to love someone's work, but when it crosses or hate someone's work, but when it crosses into loving or hating that person, I think we're dealing with projection. I think that is an outlet for people to not look within at the parts of themselves that they really do respect and admire and want to cultivate more of, or the parts that they hate and they judge and they think negatively about. So again,
I think it's a good point you make about idolizing, because that certainly will say Brad Pitt was someone when I was growing up. I was like, what a perfect man. It's just like an angel from above. He looks beautiful.
He does all these cool roles.
His roles are really cool. He's marrying these beautiful women. I was like, man, to be Brad Pitt.
Yeah.
And then he does this interesting interview where an interviewer basically says the same thing. And they're like, you've got all this stuff. And he goes, yeah, the exterior looks nice. I don't think you'd want to trade. Because he says, I wish I were you. He says, I don't think you'd want to trade if you knew what was happening on the inside. And the interviewer laughs, but he's not joking.
Yeah.
He's saying, don't get fooled by the pretty women and the fact that I'm beautiful. I have miserable moments all the time.
Yeah.
And so, it's true of the people you idolize too. You can like Fight Club, but the second you think that Brad Pitt is living a perfect life, and if only I could be Brad Pitt, you wouldn't trade with him either.
Yeah.
You knew what was going on.
Yeah, that mentality has stopped there was a point in which, and I still would love to on this podcast, have interesting people who I admire to speak to them. But there was a point, probably stopped a year or two ago, where I thought that if I could get into the friend group of the Tim Ferrisses and the Joe Rogans, that would be important.
Just to be clear, having a candid conversation with Brad Pitt where he would be honest, on or off camera,
be fantastic.
Be one of the most enlightening conversations I ever
Absolutely.
had. Because he has had it all, and he's had the good and the bad.
Yeah.
Like I could learn so much from that conversation.
I would love to speak with these people.
Yeah.
I'd love to, but it went beyond that. It went, if you could like me, and if I could be your friend, and we could be buds, and we could text or call, then that would mean something.
Yeah.
And I've absolutely let that go. I mean, I am I'm fortunate. You're an awesome friend. Like, our friend group is amazing, and maybe I'm overvaluing them. I love them, but like, I don't think I can do any better. Like, yeah. I'm sure there's wonderful people everywhere of similar quality, but whether they're famous and they've had achievements, I don't think that I'm going to find people that make me laugh any more than my friends make me laugh. Like, it's going to be, if I'm lucky, more of the same quality of friend.
Say, maybe the takeaway is no better, no worse.
No worse.
Like,
no
if you
worse.
I don't know, I'm not going to list them, but there's 10 people of Tim Ferriss's notoriety, fame, and wealth, right? They're not all going to be less funny.
No.
The point's not that they're bad. The point's not Brad Pitt's bad. It's that there's no, at the end of the day, you just want people that are kind to you and make you feel good.
It's going to be people.
And some of these people, exactly.
It's going to be
it's
people.
agnostic of their success.
Exactly. So that's not to say that I couldn't, that's no diss on any of these people.
No.
It's just to say that I have great people, and I'm sure there's great people in that sphere, and there's also people that are not, both in the people that I do encounter on a semi-regular basis and in that circle as well. Yeah. So that's the truth. I had one other thing, which is it's a minor point. I watched Nick Offerman. He's the guy from Parks and Rec on
Hot Wings.
Hot Wings. Yeah.
I know that because it was being fed to me.
Being fed to you. And actually, Henry watched it. I just overheard. And it was interesting because he was talking about the importance, what did he say, of being able to use a screwdriver and change a tire, and how that was important to being a fully realized person.
Yeah.
And I disagreed with him.
Sure, me too.
And what I thought was interesting, and that this happens in every generation, and I'm sure I'm guilty of this, is that when 200 years ago, I don't know if we had screwdrivers, and tires certainly did not exist, right? Screwdrivers and tires were the technology of his time.
Sure.
That was how things got done when he was there. And today, what you do with your hands is you program, right? You code. There's a mind-hand synergy that goes on there. Video games in some way are that. That's what we do with our hands today. And so I wanted to be careful as I get older to not start telling the youth that the technology that I grew up with is somehow superior, more human than the technology that they will grow up with.
Screwdrivers are cool, but that's like saying if you can't load a musket, then you are not a fully realized adult.
Yes, and he wasn't evangelical. That was his hot take on the ability to craft a bench.
Sure, I'm just saying that everything is going to get outdated.
Sure,
screwdrivers are useful now. No diss to people who like screwdrivers.
Yeah, listen, but you didn't mine the ore that turned the axe into a thing, which is what people had to do 1,000 years ago or 2,000 years ago.
You don't know how to smelt metal.
Yeah,
there's a ton of skills.
Well, he might.
I'm saying we lose skills and gain skills along the way.
Yes, he did not build all of the foundational things that allowed him to chop down the tree or smelt the metal or the whatever, right? People argue that cursive was important when we were growing up, that one needed to be able to write in cursive.
Well, define important. I don't even know what metric. This seems so easily disproved. Like, it's important to be successful, to be happy.
Well, no, I think what happens is the generations say the way that I did things is one should do. Sure, one should continue to do.
Zuckerberg might have never held a screwdriver in his life.
Of course,
he's got more money than God.
well, what they would say is that I think that you miss out, and I'm sure you do. I'm absolutely sure you do. When you're not farming from the ground, or you're not suffering with sickness for medicines that we have, you're missing out on human experiences. Mm-hmm. But I also think it goes both ways. Those people who are very handy and can change a tire but can't program are missing out on something when it comes to programming. I think that's part of what it is to be alive, is to recognize that there's a lot of ways to express one's creativity and humanity, and there is an intrinsic belief that the way that you were taught to do it and raised to do it is somehow superior than other people. And that was just a reminder that, oh man, I'm going to fall into this as I get older, and I'm going to start telling kids what they ought to be doing and that they're not doing it the right way. And I want to check that impulse in myself.
I want to let you know you made up for the virtuous circle thing, because that was well said. So I'm gonna add nothing. I thought that was very well said.
Virtuous, it's like this.
It's a thing.
It's the shape.
The waist of the.
It's the shape.
You guys get it. Like, picture a tornado, but a virtue.
But you're looking down on the tornado.
It gets higher. This is super random. Did you see the Witcher trailer?
I saw one of them.
Netflix is legit. I really don't have a takeaway besides how crazy it is that this little online streaming business.
They're not an online streaming business. They were a DVD delivery.
This is what I'm saying, I guess. This thing that was a tiny upstart can now hire Superman to do combat scenes that rival Game of Thrones and modern movies. I watched the trailer. I just went, it's insane to me that a tech startup funded this.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Or that a tiny streaming company started this. That was my only takeaway.
Yeah.
Oh my God, this is blockbuster.
I have more than that. We've discussed this, but it's worth saying on the podcast. We've been doing our business for 7 or 8 years. Mm-hmm. There were people, and there will be people, and it's the first time that I've seen someone who, you know, struggled for a year or two, made it for the next 2 or 3 years, and because you're in that, you go, they've made it. Mm-hmm. They're done. And now we're seeing people cap off, and you're seeing the dip start to happen. Who knows where we are in that cycle? But it really taught me that life is long, and a business can be alive and thriving in 5 years and dead in 8.
Sure.
And what's so impressive about Netflix is that they recognize that. And they said, oh, we're killing DVDs. And I've read the book, and they had to lay off a third of their workforce because they said these people understand logistics, but they do not understand streaming at all. We need to build this incredible streaming empire. But they had the vision and I guess the intestinal fortitude. It's tough, right, to do that sort of stuff. And there were casualties along the way. There were people that were cut. Mm-hmm. And then they said, okay, you know, we've got Disney's on here. And they said, Disney's going to do this too. Yeah. We need our own IP. And then they got on that before, like now Disney Plus exists, but they've got Stranger Things. They've got stuff that will keep people. So they've been innovating ahead of the curve. And
they get the A-listers. Like YouTube Red tried this. Mm-hmm. No, not YouTube. Love you guys. But they tried this, but they did it with random actors or YouTube stars. You know what I mean? Not a ton of...
They went half in, and that's totally fine.
Yeah,
but Netflix...
dude, Netflix has Superman. There's a Paul Rudd one I'm watching. They have these... Will Smith made a just for Netflix movie.
Yep.
Like, they are making A-list productions.
The YouTube Red was a side project.
Yeah.
And this is... And I think we can be guilty of this. I think we should talk about the podcast like this, because I do think the channel, like every channel, is going to have a natural life. And there's a temptation to go... oh, I'll start something, but it'll be like my YouTube Red. It'll be my side project. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to really push it. And if we are, in fact, I still am interested in making some of the videos, but I've said a lot of what I have to say. And the podcast for me is a more interesting space to talk about a wider variety of things. Mm-hmm. So if we're going to do this once a week, I think we need to do it twice a week.
Yeah, I agree.
I think we need to push it. I think we need to... I mean, when you look at the amount of money that Netflix invested, that people would have thought they were crazy because they had a thriving business and they were throwing money away into these Netflix productions, 99 out of 100 of which were trash.
Yeah, no one wanted. At first, no one wanted. They just went, just give me Marvel movies. I'm not going to watch this.
Yep. But they're alive because of it.
Yeah,
and
I
think that we're not in the same competitive field as Netflix, thank God.
Yeah.
But
because they'd eat our lunch.
Yes, exactly. But we need to keep innovating.
I agree.
And people can't, I've seen this with my friends, you cannot rest on your laurels.
Yeah.
You can for about a year, 2 years, and then you can't rest on them after that. So
I love it.
Yeah, gotta keep innovating. That's it for you?
That's it for me.
That's it for me. Angel, welcome to the podcast. Angel's a little bit sick. Thanks for showing up. We appreciate you coming in with the cold.
Yeah, no problem. I've got some current events here. So speaking of YouTube, MrBeast's most recent stunt was that he promised to plant 20 million trees. He and a couple of volunteers ended up planting a couple thousand for his video. Bless you. But he called for donations and actually has had some backing from Twitter CEO Jack Dorsey, who donated $150,000, and Elon Musk, who donated or plans to donate $1 million.
Yeah, I saw him. He apparently it went in.
Yeah, well, and he even changed his name on Twitter to Treelon. So he is all in.
He can meme so well.
He's great.
He can meme so well.
Yeah. No, they were saying he even formulated his tweet where he said, "I'm going to give the money," in a way that made it memeable, if that makes sense. He didn't just write, "Hey, MrBeast, I'm in. I'd like to donate." Yeah. Like, he phrases things hoping that people will take it and meme it. Yeah.
And I saw that there was someone. Do you have more, Angel?
Well, I was just going to say, right now they're a little over 2 million, and which they say will be about 12 million trees. So he's close to his goal already.
Interesting. Wait, they must have raised more. Oh, you donate. It's less. I thought it was $1 per tree. Am I wrong?
I think it's $1 per 20 trees is what it said.
Oh, wow.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that math doesn't work. It's 2 million for 12 million.
I believe I could check out it again.
We should run the numbers on the math, because I thought that Elon donated $1 million, not a million trees.
No, he donated $1 million. Yeah.
Okay, got it. And I saw somebody else, I believe it was dollars, that, and this is the interesting thing, came in with $1,000,001. Some person you probably haven't, I would you haven't heard of them. And it's just interesting when you can get that when you can work validation and competitive nature into charity.
Well, even before Elon, Mr. Beast donated $100,000 and he said, someone beat this, please. And then someone came in with 101 and he immediately came in with 102.
Yeah.
And so then Elon came in and someone else came in. Like, Mr. Beast plans for that.
That's also so mean to 101 guy.
Yeah.
He just wanted his moment. And
he got his moment.
He had a moment.
I'm sure he was shouted out in a video.
Yeah.
You know?
You just snarked him right away.
So thanks so much for that. Now beat this.
Yeah. No, when you can work people's competitive nature and a public scoreboard, this is why all of those Soul Cycles are blowing up, is because you can, well, I guess Soul Cycle might not have this, but there's a lot of the Orange Theory type places where they put your score in front of everybody.
What do you think Mr. Beast did that we didn't do? Because obviously he has a bigger audience.
He's got a huge audience.
Well, no one tried to come in and beat, you know, if we each gave 50 grand. No one came in with 51. And we didn't even mention it. We didn't say...
We didn't meme it. We didn't mention it. He's more of a personality than we are. That's the other thing. I wasn't on screen, and people don't come to Charisma on Command for Charlie Houpert. They go to Mr. Beast for Mr. Beast.
Well, we also didn't set it up. There was no validation in coming in at 50,001.
Sure, and maybe we could have, but his whole channel... I mean, we approached it, and I think he did it perhaps more wisely, from the motivational perspective of be like Keanu Reeves, give some money, and that was our vision. Do a little bit, right? Just do a little bit. And a lot of people did a little bit, which we raised 300 grand.
I'm proud of what we did. Yeah. I'm just thinking out loud.
Mr. Beast, I haven't watched the video, and I think it would be fascinating to do, but knowing his style, it was probably gamified. It became a big event. It became... exciting.
Yeah, people want to be at the top of his leaderboard, is all I'm saying. And people were very happy to let you and I be at the top of the Charity Water leaderboard.
Yes. Well, there was recognition that was certainly going to be involved. There was follow-up videos. It became an event. It became a party at which you wanted to be involved in. And ours was, the motivation was, do this for the internal feeling that you'll get. You will not be validated outside of knowing that you did something good.
No, and obviously, I hope this goes without saying, obviously appreciate a ton all the people that donated.
Yeah.
I'm just thinking for next time, we're gonna do more, fundraising.
Yeah.
And so I question, maybe we should study Mr. Beast. Why was he able to create that? We might not know the answer. We might have to study him.
I have to look.
I think that's interesting that people wanted to come in, take the top spot.
Yeah. No, he definitely is a better promoter than we are.
Yeah.
There's no question.
I don't think trees are more compelling than water, I guess is what I'm saying. So he's doing something that makes people want that top spot.
Got it. Yeah, I agree.
We should figure it out.
Sure.
Just to clarify real quick before I move on, you guys were right. It's $1 per tree.
$1 per tree.
I was a little confused.
Got it.
Blame the NyQuil.
On Dayquil now, but yeah.
So what's the one that makes you really high? Sudafed?
I don't know.
What's Sizurup made out of?
Robitussin, maybe?
I think it's prescription strength cough medicine with what's it called? Promethazine?
You think?
Codeine. No, codeine. Oh, codeine.
I think it's when you mix promethazine with...
No, that's a brand, I think. It's codeine, I think.
Got it.
Listen, I went to school. I never did it, but I went to school when that was like the thing. Like,
yeah,
it
you
was
put it in a
rap
bathtub, and then I watched a video on it.
See, I went to school when like lean was like in every rap song. So even if you didn't do it, you knew the culture. So that's my excuse, and I'm sticking to it.
I believe you because I don't know what lean is. I'm out.
Lean is the newer slang for what you just said. I think scissor up or whatever.
Scissor up.
Why, dude? Angel doesn't know what a screwdriver is. It's just a generational thing.
All right, what else we got?
Obama was speaking at an Obama Foundation event, and he said he called out call-out culture or cancel culture and said that it is not activism. He said, people who do really good stuff have flaws. People who you are fighting may have kids or may love their kids and share certain things with you. And he's been receiving a lot of bipartisan support. People that are notable on both sides of the political spectrum have come out in support. So I just wanted to see if you guys had a take on that.
Yeah, I haven't watched the whole thing, but I mean,
did you see any of it?
No.
Okay.
No, I don't know anything about it. It sounds, those are two sentences that ring true to me. Yeah. It seems that
I watched. Sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead. If you watched it, tell me.
Well, I watched a bit of it.
Yeah.
It had a quote I wrote down that I really liked, which is it's almost weird that we have to say this, but Obama said, "I get a sense sometimes now that among certain young people, and this is accelerated by social media, there is a sense of the way of making change is to be judgmental to other people, and that's enough. And I just think that that's interesting, because that is kind of what's happened, is that you can come out and there's this sense that calling out other people is the equivalent of making good change in the world. Mm-hmm. And I agree with him. So I thought it was cool that he came out and highlighted that that's not the best way to make the world a better place. It's just to come out and judge other people and be mean to other people.
Obviously, everything changes. Do you think that we've hit the end, or at least an inflection point in this era? That is, I would say, lasted probably like 2 years.
I do. So I think there'll always be hate videos and there'll always be a bit of cancel culture. But I do think we're hitting the point where you can even see it in the comments when we talk about our own video. And people go, listen, dude, you just have to ignore that stuff.
Yeah.
And if you see a video that's critical of someone, just ignore it. Because obviously it's going to be out of... Like, there's a sense of obviously this is fake. Obviously this is out of context.
Got it. So you and what I would say... It seems like there will always be people on either side of an issue that believe passionately in one direction or the other. Mm-hmm. It sounds like what you're saying is that there's an increasing majority that is getting tired of or skeptical of these types of...
Skeptical, I think, is the best. I think the first time someone made a takedown video, it was taken as gospel. Mm-hmm. I think the first time someone made a 10-minute thing that went, look at this mashup of what a monster this person is, everyone went, person's a monster.
Yeah.
And I think now there's more of a sense of, okay, we've seen enough. Someone comes out against James Charles, and then James Charles comes out with screenshots, and then this and that. And I think there's a bit of maybe we're not getting the full story.
Got it.
That is becoming the default for more people as time goes on.
Got it.
I think. Could be wrong.
Yeah, who knows? We'll see.
To be fair, some people didn't like his comments here.
I'm sure.
People came out and said, who are you to lecture other people about that this isn't the right way to make change?
Well, what's weird is, of course, somebody said that. The news reporting, what's not reported that we're asking is, where did the majority land?
Yeah.
Like, of course. I mean, listen, someone responded to this and said, he said this because he's part of the robot overlords that are coming to invade. Like,
lizard people
think all sorts of things. Yeah. And the three tweets that are chosen in the article become the thrust. But what I would like to know is,
where do most people fall?
Yeah, and I think this is part of the issue in anticipating the election as it comes up is a lot of the people who are more in the middle don't talk so loud, except perhaps until election day when some of them do show up and then they cast their vote. So yeah, Twitter might have a loud voice in one particular direction, but I'm always curious where the internet ends and the real world begins, and how much people would actually not show up to a Louis C.K. event or something of that nature, right?
Well,
or stop watching James Charles or whatever it is these days.
Yeah, I think people are fatiguing from the hate a little bit. I think there was this rush of the best thing to do to get views and popularity and this and that is to hate. And I do wonder if people are kind of getting over it. Obama is talking about it. I think things swing too far.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I think there's a sense that, okay, this has swung too far.
Interesting. I don't agree or disagree. I'm not sure. I'm interested to see how it plays out, though. Cool. Anything else?
Twitter's CEO, Jack Dorsey, made an announcement that political ads going forward will no longer be allowed on Twitter in any capacity. He tweeted, "We've made the decision to stop all political advertising on Twitter globally. We believe political message reach should be earned, not bought."
Ooh, wow, that's fascinating. So, like, the person who's going to earn the most is undoubtedly Donald Trump in terms of what serves the media cycle. Donald Trump had billions of dollars of free media coverage. That's fascinating because I know that Jack Dorsey leans left, and that does not seem like a left-leaning thing in this coming election.
Well, the one thing, and maybe I'm just being short-sighted or stupid, but the thing I like about this is it does appear to be against his best interests monetarily.
Oh, sure.
Because there was going to be a lot of money going to Twitter for political ads. And that money is still going somewhere. He has not stopped political advertising. There's just going to be more money towards Facebook, more money towards Instagram. So my initial reaction to this is that I think it is probably an integrous move. Whether it's right or wrong, good or bad, whatever, I think it comes from a good place, which is very impressive to see. Which is we're going to probably give up hundreds of millions of dollars.
Some money, yeah. Well, the other thing is I admire that for the same reasons that you described, but it's unfortunate that it comes down to the individual companies to make the call. This does seem like the Citizens United is really where you want to start coping with the amount of money that has entered election cycles. It seems that you'd like it to be less.
Yeah. Well, it's weird though, because we know this, so you don't want profit-driven political information, basically, is what we're saying. But the news is a profit-driven information vehicle.
That's fair.
And so if you say you can't advertise, right? Mike Bloomberg, I think his name's Mike, whatever, Bloomberg can't come in and use his billions of self-made dollars to promote himself.
What he can do is direct. Yeah.
He can, well, forget that. He can be inflammatory.
Yeah.
And so I wonder, does this give, you're not saying that the person who raises the most money can get the most coverage. But what you are saying is the person who gets the most salacious will. Because if you quietly have brilliant ideas, you will not get as much news coverage as the person who is outlandish. And I think we saw that with Trump.
Trump raised far less money than Hillary did.
And so weirdly enough, and I'm not anti this move, like I said, I think this is great on some levels, is you don't solve the problem. What you do is you highly incentivize people to be profitable for news organizations.
I have to think about this more because I think the underlying problem is, what role do you want advertising and money to play in the political process?
It's still all money is what I'm saying. It's just, how can I get, if I'm running for president and I'm not allowed to ad, I'm not allowed to pay for Facebook ads, TV commercials, nothing, right? One question I ask myself is, how do I get the most news coverage now?
Yeah.
It's not how do I come up with the best platform? How do I be the most thoughtful for the American people? It's how do I do that and get CNN to want to put me on CNN as much as possible, and definitely more than my opposition. Yeah. So there's this weird thing where your money is still driving the bus.
Yeah, I don't have a solution. I'm sure I don't have a solution, but it's definitely
you'd need nonprofit news. You'd need like PBS to be the only station that could run presidential anything.
Well, even so, I mean, people have biases and agendas, and now who gets to speak on PBS?
Sure, yeah.
Does Andrew Yang get on PBS? Oh, we don't think he's big enough to speak on.
Sure.
You know, right? So like, there's going to be problems no matter what.
Yeah, of course.
I got to read like the foundational texts of that came up with the ideas of democracy and see how this works. But I think everyone would agree to some extent that you don't want these things purchased, right? Yeah. You don't want the interests of a few people having an outsized effect because they're able to spread misinformation about what somebody plans to do. And of course, that's compounded by the fact that these people must play a game and be deceptive in what their campaign promises they make that they can't deliver upon because they can't get the majority they need.
There's really no accountability for making a campaign promise and not keeping it.
No, and I think
isn't that crazy?
Well, I think what that speaks to is that people don't vote for policy.
Yeah.
People vote for personality and what that person represents to them. You know, that person's a freedom fighter, that person's a capitalist, that person's a socialist, whatever it is that they feel they represent. And then oftentimes they don't deliver on the promise, but we got our guy, we got our gal. That's what we wanted.
Yeah. I'm truly fascinated. I have no takeaways or enlightened thoughts on it. It's just interesting. Trump could have no wall, not put in term limits, and be reelected. Mm-hmm. And that's just fascinating because the two of his biggest platforms that I remember is the wall and drain the swamp. But still might just beat out Bernie Sanders or Elizabeth Warren or whoever it is.
Let's come back in a couple weeks with a more thoughtful discussion of the role of money in politics and how it ideally might be around, because I really don't know. This is a sticky, thorny issue. But
you going to study it? How are you going to be smarter in a couple weeks?
I'm not going to study it. I would read the philosophy. I actually think that the stats are so uninteresting. Like the basic foundational philosophies of like, what is a democracy? It's okay. The idea is that the people have the power, that the majority of people have the power to set the direction of the government, but you cannot infringe upon minority rights. Okay. What would that look like throwing everything out? You know, does everybody just vote on their iPhone that is issued from the government and you vote for every single thing? And maybe that's the other thing is we have a republic. We don't have a democracy. Yeah. And that's because it was completely unfeasible to have a democracy. We could have far more democratic
that'd be
approaches.
Crazy. That'd be crazy. If it was like, hey, we're pretty sure that Iraq has WMDs. Should we invade? And everybody just goes on to this government-issued iPad, and you literally go, I'm going to have 1/300 millionth of a vote. I vote invade.
Yeah.
I vote don't invade. And that was literally what decided if we went to war or not.
Yeah.
That'd be crazy.
Is that crazier than some guy that...
Not crazy bad, mind-blowing.
Yeah. And the reason you have to wonder, what would the Athenians or whatever have done had they our technology with the philosophy? Probably they would have kept their slaves and, like done the things that they did back then and not given actual power to the people. But the point is that we have antiquated systems that we may or may not need anymore. Career politicians.
That'd be wild, dude. You'd actually truly feel involved to some extent.
I would vote. I would vote.
Oh yeah.
I don't vote right now because to vote in a republic, there's nobody that I want that I particularly
to make all the decisions. Yeah.
Especially with the Electoral College, the fact that I now live in California. It's like I don't.
No, no matter what happens, it's gonna go Democrat, and there's really not much I can do once that person's in office to sway them.
But if I were voting for policy, I would vote all the time.
Yeah, same.
So maybe that's the answer is again, that's why I think you should always come back to the foundations of any sort of question.
Why are we a republic?
Should we what does a democracy mean? Yeah. Like what would that look like? How could we do that? Is that a good thing? That's why I like philosophy more than politics or even any of the other disciplines.
You know what would be hard about that? You'd need the people in power to approve that system. You'd need the people in power to give up power back to the people.
Yeah. That's not what we philosophers worry about, though. We come up with good ideas.
I'm an idea guy.
We forget the real world. Okay, what else?
The NCAA's board has voted to allow college athletes to profit from their names, images, and likenesses.
You have this, right?
No, because this it was before it was California. The state of California created laws that allows athletes here in California.
Oh, only California.
In spite of the NCAA's rules.
That's exactly what we said would happen.
Now
right?
the NCAA has voted to, on their end, allow it.
It's
I believe globally.
It's a total.
I mean, nationwide. I mean, globally. Sorry.
They were powerless to stop it.
Exactly.
And so they had two options: let every state just tell them what was going to be up while they look like the bad guy, or do this, because either way it was happening in every state.
Well, what we said, I believe when we spoke about this, is every athlete's going to California.
Yep.
You're going, and the NCAA will no longer exist because all you fans of Virginia basketball, there's no one there, right? And so like the NCAA would just be demolished from a lack of
it's a total. And they're like, oh, we want to be good to the student. I hate the NCAA. Oh, we want to be good to the athletes. You just greedy pushovers, you're just doing this to save face because you got beat by California.
Well, it's tough, and this is the thing. The NCAA, and I think this could be true of a lot of people, is if you're a guy working in the NCAA, you're working in an industry that if you did go to the foundations of it, you go, I don't really know what role we have. Maybe we shouldn't exist.
Yeah.
Or maybe we should exist at a scale that is 1/100th of our current size. How many people can do that, right? That's such a tough thing to do. That's personal financial strife and all these sorts of things. So they have to think that the perpetuation of the NCAA is important. But again, if you come back to the foundation, why would we have this mandatory amateur league for these phenomenal athletes that in an open market would be paid absurd amounts of money while we pocket the profits from merchandise and everything else associated with it? And they went, what if we just did this a little bit more fairly? Well, we wouldn't exist. Well, that's the right thing to do, though. Like that's never going to happen. Like, and I think it's tough because the NCAA again there's just bad people in the NCAA.
No.
You put any other person from any other industry in there and say, "Are you willing to chop your own legs off to do the right thing?" They would go, "No way! Like we need to persist. We have to find a way to be an important institution going forward." And so. Yeah, it's tough for them, man. You don't want to be in the NCAA. Got to innovate. Got to be like my boy on slot.
I wonder why people go to work there. You're a college athlete and you think it's good. Like you're a college athlete that wasn't going to go pro and you think it's a good thing. I live in an echo chamber. I only hear people that don't like the NCAA.
You know people who chose where they went to work. Let me tell you, why did I take my first job? Because they accepted me. Right? Like you and your elite little Wharton friends got to decide which part of the world you wanted to conquer.
That's
right.
Fair.
They offer you a job. Is how you wind up there. And I'm sure there's some people that are fascinated or that are in the college athlete, but that's not Google. Right? That's a place that a lot of people
they just give you more money than your alternatives.
yeah, you might not have an alternative. That, you know, you come in at the ground floor and they'll take you. So that's your tribe now. And 10 years later, you're in a vice president.
You're the head of it and you love it.
Yep.
Because they helped you support your family.
And you've seen that there's good things that they've done. The NCAA, like every organization out there, has had positive effects on people's lives. It's just when you go net, should this continue to exist? The answer may be no, despite the fact that they can point to, you know, 100 athletes and say this was phenomenal. I'm glad that I participated. Yeah.
Well, those athletes can still participate.
Exactly.
That's the thing. I'm not saying to disband college sports.
Well, part of the issue, and I don't know the NCAA, what they do is I think they're closely involved with Title IX, which means that the money that they take in from, I don't know if the NCAA distributes, but football and basketball gets distributed to swimming and field hockey. Yeah. So the majority of student athletes might not have a budget if not for the surplus created by some of
the majority of money they make goes to that?
No. All of the money comes from football and basketball.
Yeah.
But the majority of students...
Yeah, sorry. But
did I say that I misspeak?
No, I just don't know the answer. I thought the majority of the money that the football team made got paid to the football team.
Probably, yes. But there's just...
Or to the university at large.
Sure. But there's just so much that the majority of student athletes are not economically feasible.
Maybe if no one wants to watch you play curling, you should be a recreational curling player.
Yeah.
No one watched me play basketball when I was playing pickup basketball. You know what I mean? I wasn't like, hey, University of Pennsylvania, I like basketball. I'm not good at it. No one wants to watch. Will you send me some money so I can have a coach? Like, no. You can still go play by yourself with no coach and no ref.
Yeah.
That's what I did.
Yeah.
Maybe if your sport has no spectators and you don't bring in any revenue, you shouldn't have a ref unless you're going to fund it yourself.
I would like to hear the opposite side of that argument. And I'm sure there's people who take the other side. If you want to call in next week, let us know. Because I can't come up with a good reason that we should fund those sorts of things. But in any event, moving along. What else we got?
This one's a little heavier, but...
Nice. We always have one moment.
I had to get a little heavy. For the last few weeks, there have been unprecedented anti-government protests in Iraq that have taken over the streets of Baghdad. It's gotten pretty violent, unfortunately. Hundreds have been killed, and the police force has been responding with gunfire in addition to tear gas. Mm-hmm. I unfortunately have not had a ton of time to become super well acquainted with this story, but from my understanding, there isn't a specific issue necessarily. It's a call for a total overhaul of the country's political system. I don't know if you guys have any takes on that.
So I know nothing about this particular story.
No, me neither, but I know that we have people who live in Iraq who watch.
Yeah.
Do we want to have someone try to Skype in?
That'd be amazing.
So if you live in Iraq and you think that you have a perspective to share on the podcast, submit with, instead of your phone number, because we struggle to make international calls, a Skype ID or something. Yeah. And let's try to talk to someone that's in Iraq that can actually share what's happening on the ground.
Yeah. So the only reaction that I have to this is that I know a little bit of U.S. history, and the 1900s are a long story of us installing governments that tumble within a few years after us leaving and leave this power vortex. And sometimes we even then prop up governments that have secret kill squads and all these sorts of things. And I don't know whether the average Iraqi would prefer a Saddam Hussein or this or that, but it does seem that the idea of spreading democracy by taking out a dictator and installing a government does not work.
Well, weirdly enough, you're comparing what's currently happening with the violent riots compared to Saddam Hussein, who we took out. But didn't we also put in Saddam Hussein when we took out someone else? Like, our involvement runs deep.
We supported Saddam Hussein
versus
what I'm saying. Iran. Yes,
that's what I'm saying.
Weapons that he then used.
That's what I'm saying. It's like, oh, we created this vacuum because we tried to do the right thing by taking out Saddam Hussein. Mm-hmm. We also empowered Saddam Hussein. Like, the U.S.'s meddling runs deep.
Yeah. And so one thing, again, not a huge student of history, if you want to get in here to debate this, I'm happy to do so. I would have to brush up a bit. But I do think it's fairly easy to defend that the U.S. doesn't look around the world and go, who needs democracy? Though that is what we say when we invade a country. We look around the world and go, who's threatening our interests right now? And those interests might be more noble, as in the case of World War II, and they might be less noble, as in the case of a lot of Latin American countries where we're going in for United Fruit to make sure that their plantations are staying privatized. we will always say as we invade, though, that it's for democracy. I guess I don't want to say that I'm an isolationist or that there's never a reason, but I am definitely less desirous of being involved in these foreign conflicts, partially because it's often represented as if there's one place we got to get to. There's an axis of evil, and there's 3 countries. There's, North Korea, Iraq, and who knows at this point. I forget the other one. But there's horrible things happening everywhere that just do not make the news. The politicians don't mention them because they don't care. And that's not because they're evil, right? No, there's no. There doesn't need to be an evil person orchestrating this. You all right over there? Yeah. Angel's here.
You on mute over there?
Yeah. That there's terrible things happening in the world, and we don't get involved to stop the terrible things. We get involved for the interests of the U.S., and what those interests are can be everywhere from corporate interests to security interests, and it's just a bummer, man. It's a bummer when this predictably happens, that a government that you install, all of a sudden the culture didn't want it, isn't ready for it, even if it was the perfect democratic system. So
yeah, I actually read a book that I thought was fascinating called Economic Hitman.
Yeah,
that brought a lot of this to light. But then I heard that book might not be true.
Yeah,
and so I'm very torn, and unfortunately, it's very hard to be informed on what the government is actually doing in its covert operations.
Yeah,
because that book is allegedly leaks some information that happened with some covert operations and assassinations of foreign leaders, and then obviously the government comes out and goes, "This isn't real." Yeah, and you're like, "Well, how am I, an American citizen, supposed to know what the CIA is actually doing, who they're actually assassinating?"
Well, that's why I try to, and this is an intellectual vulnerability, but I try to start from things that most people agree upon. And most people agree that we did go into Iran, and the CIA did have, I forget what it's called, this particular operation where they fomented a rebellion, took out the democratically elected leader who was going to privatize British petroleum, installed the Shah of Iran, who was a vicious despot, who had kill squads and all these sorts of things, who was chased out of his country in 1973. And then they have now this theocracy run by the Ayatollah. It's like, well, they had democracy in 1950, and now they're a theocracy. What happened in the intervening years? I don't think people argue that the U.S. didn't create that. There's a lot of things. Guatemala is similar to that. Chile is similar to that. So whether or not this particular guy, he said he was in Indonesia, he was doing these things. There's enough that we do agree.
Yeah. I don't know. The one I thought that I found fascinating, but I don't know if it's real or not, was when he was saying that we basically took over all of the fruit industry in Costa Rica, I think it was.
So Guatemala was a big one with United Fruit. I don't know about Costa Rica.
For bananas? Maybe it's Guatemala, where we came in and we basically crushed them into debt so that we could then take the collateral and then own everything that was valuable in that country.
That the specifics might be debated, but I think it's pretty well understood and agreed upon. I could be wrong. If you want to come in and talk to me, please let me know.
Well, it's an interesting system, right? Because the person that agrees to take the foreign debt is the president. So you just bribe the president. You just go, "Hey, I'm going to give you $10 million.
Oh yeah.
Some
of them didn't take it.
I'm going to give you $10 million, and you are going to give me $500 million of land.
Yeah.
And maybe I'll even give you the loan for $500 million or whatever, but at terms that are impossible for you to hit, and now I own all your land." Well, and then if you say no, I'll just crash your plane.
That's the saddest thing. That's when the presidents say no, and they start a rebellion, they arm the Contras.
Not even. This one president, he was the president of Costa Rica or Guatemala or somewhere, and
I think you're thinking it might be Panama. I could be wrong.
Maybe. I don't know. So this is the thing, and the U.S. government would say that this didn't happen. So this is why I say I don't know. Maybe
the plane
it's a
crash
fiction
one
novel.
I think is debated. I know it was either Panama
he said
or Colombia.
no. He said no.
Yeah.
I don't want your money. You can't bribe me, and you can't buy our land. And then his plane crashed and he died.
Yeah.
And then a different person was elected, and then he said, "I will take that deal."
Yeah. So,
but that could be fiction. This is the thing. It's tough to know what the CIA is actually doing.
Yeah.
What is it? They release it 50 years later? It has to come public at some point. 100 years later?
I don't know the timing. But some of the stuff is just, it's whistleblowers come out and then they can't deny it any longer. Plus nobody cares. So they go, "Yes, we do acknowledge that this did in fact happen."
We did that 75 years ago.
Yeah.
And everyone goes, "Well, that guy's retired. It's kind of hard."
No,
the guy that made that call doesn't work here anymore.
No, he's dead. So yeah, the U.S. has a bit of and again, not exceptionally, but a sordid history in terms of intervening.
But according to Charlie Houpert, any country with our economic and military strength would do the same thing.
I believe that it takes an exceptional group of people, and I do believe, we argued about this, that people are generally getting better. I think that Somebody asked about spiral dynamics. We can maybe talk about it because we've talked for a long time in another podcast. But the general idea is that the average level of human consciousness is moving up from a tribal to a religious to a merchant-based, trade-based, and is now entering a stage of a more global concern versus what would have been true 1,000 years ago, which was, kill people that do not have my same tribe. And more people are entering that space of global concern, which I tend to believe is true. So another episode we'll talk about spiral dynamics in depth, though, but hopefully it doesn't continue like this. And this is one of the last empire-type behaviors that we see from a major nation. But yeah, if you want to call in and you're from Iraq, please do. We'd love to hear how things are going. What else?
That's it for current events, but do you guys want to do questions?
Please. Yeah, sure. What time is it?
It is 2:04.
Yeah. 2:04.
Okay, so
let's do it.
We have a question from Lumifer who wants to know about toxic relationships.
Lumifer.
Lumifer.
That's a great name and or handle.
Yeah, well, actually, rather toxic friendships. So the question is, how do I end a long friendship that has turned toxic over the years? For example, nowadays the friend guilt trips me a lot and makes promises and doesn't deliver, etc. This has been going on for almost 2 of the 7 years I've known her. I feel like ghosting is better than telling her something, but is there a better way to end the friendship? And how would you do it? Love the podcast and the main channel. Thank you both for sharing your thoughts.
Cool. Also, I wanted to correct myself. I thought I got that wrong. The Shah of Iran was overthrown in 79, not 73. Sorry. I knew that didn't feel right.
So yeah, what do? You have a toxic friend. She is, what does it say? Selfish.
It says, friend guilt trips me a lot and makes promises and doesn't deliver, for example.
How do you end the friendship? Do you ghost? What do you do?
I think the question is, do I say to you, or do I say to this person, I don't want to be your friend, or do I just ghost them, or is there a third option?
With all of these situations, I go, what is your ideal circumstance? And if the ideal is they change and we remain friends, then I would shoot for your ideal, which could be the most productive outcome, which is you would sit down with this person, say, hey, this isn't easy to say. You open them up, but I have something to tell you that I've been thinking about, and it's not easy. You get them ready and primed to listen, but these particular behaviors, you speak in when you give a particular behavior and you say how you feel so that they cannot say that's untrue, right? Because they did in fact do that behavior, and what you feel is what you feel.
Yeah, so it's not because you're flaky, I don't want to be friends. It's when we made plans the last 2 times and you said you would pick me up, you didn't pick me up, and that made me feel undervalued,
like
and
don't care.
Our friendship is starting to lose its appeal to me because of instances like that.
Yeah. And if it is the case that you want to remain friends, you could say, I'm telling you this because I don't want to not be friends with you, but I feel if that continues that I would not.
Yeah, you end on the positive note. You kind of paint the positive scenario. You go, I don't want that. What I want is for us to be close and help each other. And when we say things, we're going to do them, and blah, blah, blah.
And from there you go, so I wanted to tell you, and then you ask for the change. I would like to, will you change X, Y, and Z? And normally, when approached in that way, you'll get a yes. And then you see if they change. If they do, you guys can continue to be friends, hopefully with a bit more honest communication about the particular things that you're not liking, which I do think is important. And if not, that's it. Now, I've had scenarios that have gone the other way, where it's like this person is not going to stop doing this thing. They think that they're justified in whatever toxic behaviors they're continuing to do.
I know exactly what you're talking about.
And in those cases, I had a similar conversation where I said, when this person, for instance, was a friend in a different country, and I wasn't calling him as often as he wanted me to. So when I'd get on the phone, he would lecture me about not calling him. And I said, when you lectured me for not calling you, it makes me want to call you even less. And I would like you to not do that. And he says, well, you don't call, and then you don't call me enough. And then in the same conversation, he lectured me for something else that I was doing that he didn't approve of. And it was a very judgmental relationship. I said, I don't want to do this anymore, is eventually what I said. I was like, I don't want to do this. If you want to talk and not do this, then you can call me, but I won't be calling you, is what I said. And we haven't spoken since. And that was the ideal, which is we have a good relationship or we don't have a relationship. And so I got my ideal given what was what was on the table for me. So I think that I would recommend a similar thing, and it can go either way.
Cool.
We've got one more question, and this is one that I really identify with. It comes from Daniel. How do you suggest coping with analysis paralysis? For me personally, whenever I have to make a major life decision and there's no clear path, I fret over making a decision that I'll regret. This happens so often that I end up doing nothing for long periods of time, which I realize is still a decision in itself, albeit a bad one. I would love to hear your advice.
Do you have? I mean, I have an initial thought. If you,
I do. Well, my first thought was I was laughing because Angel's going to get memed because every time there's questions, he picks at least one that applies to his own life.
Oh, every week there's always one.
The best way to get a question in front of us is just to think, what would Angel want?
Sometimes I read them, I'm like, that's a great question.
Yeah.
I want to know.
Every week, I picked this one because it would help me, crack me up. But honestly, distracted me a bit from the question. But
analysis paralysis.
Yeah. So when I read this question, there's a part of it where he says, I don't make a decision, but ultimately that is a decision. And that is what resonated with me a lot in life, which weirdly enough, it sounds like he already has that mindset. But when I had tough decisions, something I decided was I would rather regret doing something than regret not doing it. And that mindset has helped me a lot. So I think it sounds like this person is starting to get there where they're starting to regret not making decisions. But yeah, that absence of action it's not a recipe for happiness. So I think realizing that and then having that go from your front brain to your belief system, that's been really helpful for me.
Well, we did a video that is related, not directly on procrastination, which I would recommend checking out. But the other thing to do is I presume that when it comes to school and work, you hand things in on time, right? At some point, your analysis paralysis comes into contact with reality in the form of a deadline.
Set deadlines, yeah.
And the issue is that there's things in life for which no one is giving you a deadline. You don't have to start your business by XYZ day. You don't have to do anything. And not only is there no deadline, because there's no deadline, there's no penalty for missing said deadline. So the best thing that you can do for yourself is be your own boss / manager and impose draconian deadlines for these sorts of things. So if it's a big thing and you really want to take time to analyze it, you can give yourself 20 minutes, 20 minutes, an hour, whatever it is. Give yourself far less than you think you need before you need to make a decision and move forward. And the penalty for not moving forward is you'll text a friend and you'll tell him, hey, if in the next week I find myself in a decision where I, need to take some sort of course of action and I don't do it within 20 minutes of recognizing this, I'm going to send you $50. I'm going to send you $100. And now you've got a boss, and now you've got a deadline, and that's going to be much more likely to do. The other helpful heuristic is to ask yourself, will I care about this decision in, I would say, 2 weeks? Will this decision be important 2 weeks from today? And if the answer is no, you must make that decision within 10 seconds, even if it is flipping a coin. And that develops a muscle. And the muscle actually isn't just in decision making, it's in letting go. It's in going, this doesn't matter. I'm just going to move down whatever path. But those two heuristics, and especially when driven by penalty of having to pay for something, can be really, really good for getting yourself motivated to move in any direction at all.
Yeah.
Cool. Podcast is over now.
But we decided we're going to start doing international calls instead of just having fans from the U.S. able to call in. So
that'll be in the doc. You're going to have to leave a few bits of extra information so that we can definitely get in touch with you. But yeah, that's all in the document in the description below if you'd like to call for any reason. Also, huge thank you to our sponsor for this podcast, Charisma University. We talked about it, I think, at some of the answers today. But it's our course on how to be more confident and charismatic in 30 days. If you'd like to check it out, we think it's awesome. We've got 4,000 plus members at this point.
Yep.
We actually have to count exactly how many. I think it could be significantly more than that. But we've done reviews. We have people say on a scale of 1 to 10 what they're thinking. It's averaging a 9 right now.
Yep.
It's awesome.
1,183 people say it's a 9 out of 10.
So if you enjoy our channel, I think that this is the best thing that I've ever created with regards to charisma.
Yeah.
So
you know what's a bummer out of being a 9 out of 10? When someone leaves a 4-star review, you need so many. I was looking at it, I was like, to be a 9 out of 10 is actually incredible because for every 4-star, you need so many 10 stars to average a 9. If we could say the mode, it's a 10.
Yes.
The most common thing, 10.
Yeah, but that would be
But
cheating.
occasionally there's a 4. And so it's a 9.
Yeah. So anyways, if you guys want to check that out, that will be in the description below. And thanks for listening. It's been a good cast. We'll catch you maybe in a few days. We're going to try to do 2 of these a week.
We love you.
Peace.